So the internet was designed with this idea that I'm a source, there's a destination somewhere, I can send my data to this destination, and I'm relieved of responsibility. The responsible internet is this idea that because of the relevance and importance of the internet, we should have more insights and, when possible, more control of what happens. I think you see that the technical solution weaves into this idea of trusting infrastructure. Can I trust what the network does? Can I trust what the digital world does for me? I work in a computer science department. I see what other colleagues do, particularly AI nowadays. And there's lots of fantastic stuff happening, but there's also fears. You see it in the discourse. People start to fear more the loss of control.
My guest in this episode is Dr. Paola Grosso, Professor of Multiscale Networks and Director of the Informatics Institute at the University of Amsterdam. Paola joined me to talk about CATRIN, a research framework that aims to bring about greater control, accountability, and transparency in the way we use and operate the internet. For most of us, the internet is essentially a black box. We connect with other endpoints to send and receive data, but we have no insight into what paths are taken to form those connections. By drawing on various sources that provide different kinds of internet telemetry data and exploring different open networking solutions, CATRIN seeks to give users more insight and more control when it comes to deciding which paths across the internet they do and do not want to take. With concerns around the security of personal data, digital sovereignty, and sustainability becoming ever more pressing, the idea of seeking out a more responsible approach in the way we traverse the internet is a really important one. I'm Alan Davies, the Ride Labs editor, and this is the Ride Labs podcast. Could you tell us a bit about your background and how you came to be working on the CATRIN project?
Certainly. So first of all, thanks you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here with you today to have this chat together, and maybe also for the people that listen. Thanks for the time that it will take to hear us talking. My name is Paola Grosso. I am a full professor at the University of Amsterdam, and my focus area in my research is computer networks, specifically multiscale networks. So my research interest is in networks that span the globe. So all kind of research that has to do with protocols for networking across borders, let's say, or across administrative domains. At the University of Amsterdam, I'm part of a group, leading a group that actually looks at networking and computing more on a general way. So we also look at distributed computing, workflow system, and now effectively networking interfaces with computing at different levels.
Okay.
So that's a bit my research background. I started to be interested in networking when I was doing my PhD.
Okay.
And I was interested at the time in data acquisition systems.
Oh, cool.
So actually, effectively, how you could actually process data fast and efficiently. And from then, the interest grew. And for a moment, I contemplated to become network engineer and go to work for a company. I had this interest in seeing networking in practice. But life or opportunities have kept me on the academic path. So I'm still in academia, doing research. But this idea that networking is something that really happens concretely, that has relation to engineering, that there's relation to hardware, still informs my work. So I'm not working at theoretical protocol development. I always like myself, my colleagues, to be able to experiment. And I don't know if there will be a chance today to talk about it, but in the course of my career, we, as a group, as colleagues, we have had quite a lot of projects where we have interfaced and worked with network operators, with network vendors, with other academics, with other research institutions. So that's my background, academic, but with a foot into actually the real world, which is the world of networking.
And then the CATRIN project, how did that come about and how did you get involved in that?
We started quite a few years ago with the community in the Netherlands to think that we wanted to have a project where we could actually look at new protocol, new technologies to give more control to users and more insight in networking operations. So we started actually smaller. We had a project which is now nearing the end called UPIN, which was also related to this idea that you would have internetworking powered by users.
Okay.
So there was a small project, which was, let's say, an exploratory project, also funded by the Dutch National Science Foundation. And we saw the potential, and then we went for to be more ambitious, and that's where the CATRIN project came to be. So CATRIN project was a much larger project with many more partners. So this idea has been lingering in our minds 5-6 years ago already. The CATRIN project started officially 4 years ago. And now CATRIN is a bigger project. We have also European ambitions.
Yeah.
So we would like actually to try to see if we can get projects or activities at the European level. Specifically for CATRIN, right now we are, let's say, 1 year and a half into the actual work, and we still have 2 years and a half to go.
Okay, so like the early bits, we're just kind of getting the research grants.
But we have in the CATRIN project, we have 7 PhDs working. So there are 7 people that work on the project. So it's not just me.
Yeah.
It's actually not only the University of Amsterdam. We have several partners. All the technical universities of the Netherlands are involved. Eindhoven, Twente, and Delft. And the University of Amsterdam also. So we have 4 academic partners. And then we have some, let's say, non-universities, SIDN labs, but we also have an LNet lab as partner. We have SURFT collaborating.
Okay.
And then we have several industries and companies that are interested in the outcome.
Right.
So it's a large consortium where there is academia, industry, and let's say other networking organization.
Yeah.
When we will maybe talk a little bit more about the project or CATRIN, you will see that also for us it's interesting to involve societal group. The Waage, which is also here, located not very far from here, brings in exactly this outreach to societal group, to the community, to the citizens, and not just to the technical people.
So what does a responsible internet look like? What's the big picture?
Okay. If you don't mind, I take you one step back.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem.
The idea of the responsible internet, the term responsible internet, comes partly from this idea of responsible artificial intelligence, the responsible AI. So there has been some literature, academic literature, but which then became, let's say, more common terminology that people also use outside academia, related to responsible AI. So what are responsible practices when you develop work in artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
And in responsible AI, there is the idea that you need to be transparent about what the AI does. You need to be accounting for what the AI does. You need to have fairness principles. And we see this discussion very relevant. I hope you will have a podcast on AI. So we hijacked or we reused or we applied the same term to the internet infrastructure. So a responsible internet has some of the same principle, which are actually the one also in the CATRIN project, the controllability, which is the first letter of the project name, accountability, and transparency. So CATRIN uses these 3 principles, which are sort of similar to the ones you would apply in AI or in general in technology development. The responsible internet is this idea that because of the relevance and importance of the internet, we should have more insights and, when possible, more control of what happens. People, societal groups, do see the need to have more understanding of what's going on with their data.
Yeah.
It's not just a technical problem. It's a problem that actually, from the technical solution, will give answers to maybe some of the challenges that we see more broadly. I think you see that the technical solution weaves into this idea of trusting infrastructure. Maybe it's a little bit too ambitious to call it the trusted internet, responsible internet.
Yeah.
But you see that they cannot be separated any longer. I don't follow enough the discussions you have here at RIPE, but maybe people that listen have the same discussion. Can I trust? Can I trust what the network does? Can I trust what the digital world does for me? I'm coming to the idea that this responsible internet should, in the way we envision it as academic, an internet you can trust more.
There's this analogy through a lot of the literature on this. The internet's currently a black box, but you give more visibility to where the traffic actually goes, what paths you use across the internet. What problems does that solve? Why do I need to have that control? So
the internet was designed with this idea that I'm a source, there's a destination somewhere, I can send my data to this destination, and I'm relieved of responsibility, we do not necessarily care exactly which route or which path our traffic has gone through. But there are cases where this is important. So there are jurisdictional reasons why maybe you would want to have an insight to where your traffic goes. And we can have, again, another long discussion about whether the world is going in the right directions. But there's certainly legislation that requires you to not move data to certain location or maybe not through certain locations. So in some sense, it's already something that people can influence, for example, also with BGP policies, in which way they want to steer certain traffic to certain destination. So in some sense, there is already a level of control. The question is whether are you able or willing, requested or required to expose it. There are other reasons to do it. For example, you see quite a lot in the space of data sharing. So when you have companies that work together to share data, they might have specific agreements on which way the data is transferred, processed, distributed. For example, in terms of federated machine learning. So if I'm having a application where you and I collaborate and we need to distribute data to a certain computing center, we might want to have more control on which way the data goes. So effectively try to tune the performance of the network to what the application does. So a little bit closer synergy between which way the traffic is steered with knowledge of the applications. So you see that there are different actors. Potentially could also be the individual citizens that want to have some kind of insight or wants to be guaranteed that something happened. But we are not necessarily building this for the individual. There might be possibilities, but most likely I would imagine it for companies, for businesses. In fact, in CATRIN project, we have some businesses that want to offer this.
Right, okay.
Sometimes it might also be that some ISPs or some network providers, by implementing some of the CATRIN results, might be able to offer to their customers a higher level of trust. I can guarantee you that I'm doing certain things because I'm accountable or I'm transparent to certain behavior. The CATRIN project tries to find what are the tools and the possibilities in this space, but it will be not one size fits all. So whether you want to use a provider that uses CATRIN methods, it's up to you.
Yeah. How would you make this work? So let's turn to the more technical questions. Reading through the literature on this, there's this level, the network inspection plane, where you pick up on certain attributes of networks and you're going to use internet measurement tools to figure out what features different networks have. How does this work?
So we have this work on the inspection plane, on the information plane, is primarily done in Twente.
Okay.
It's the University of Twente, Technical University of Twente. He's one of the university is the University of the Netherlands that has a long-standing tradition in network measurements. Maybe you know some of these people, maybe you will invite them for another podcast, they can say even more. So the people that are in Twente work primarily on this part. We at the University of Amsterdam are more focused on the controllability part. So maybe we'll tell you a little bit more about that. But the way they want to do it is, for example, to gather information both in real time from their experimental platforms to try to understand if they have data that comes from the devices that they have insight into, what kind of data would be useful. So you could say this is more of a lab environment. We have something called the two-stick environment where we can do this kind of measurements. At the same time, they have visibility in lots of BGP data or information that is published either in real time or in semi-real time or also more statically from providers. And they put all of this into a big database or their databases, and then they try to start to gain insight of all kind of information it's available and which metrics would be useful to actually then inform the control plane. So even there is not one single database, there is not one single source of knowledge. They are using all the measurements they've been doing. They also use CAIDA measurements, they use measurements from... and they try effectively to determine which metrics would be useful. And also to find the taxonomy, let's say the vocabularies, that allow you to determine which metrics in which order are relevant to do certain decisions. So if you know 4 things about a certain ISP, which maybe come from ripe databases.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, I know this for things, which one are relevant and in which order to make later on a decision.
Yeah.
Of course, there is also measurement that you can do, as I say, by having information in real time, but also simply getting data that is publicly available. So there are, I think, 3-4 people in Twente working on this, on the different aspects. And this is effectively where they try to see how to use this information.
Yeah, that's really cool, because when I first started reading about it, and I think we didn't meet properly, but you were here at a measurements day.
Yes, you remember we had this meeting.
Was here,
yes.
and when I first heard about the idea, I assumed that the network operators themselves would have to supply a lot of this information, and that sounded like such a big ask. But this idea that actually we can use various platforms to gather a lot of this information and collate it, and
Definitely.
yeah, so like that's...
So there is information already available. Of course, I can imagine if this project will end, there will be other people, we will continue to do this research. Of course, you can envision a moment where there will be new information that will be made available, or that will be possible to gather. But you're not stuck even now. You can, for example, take manners. You can also decide that you will have when you request a path or when you want a path to determine whether you went through a domain which implements manners or whatever. Or because we want to intersect, or we want to not intersect, we want to couple this information with control for the level that is possible. Knowing certain things about certain path will allow you potentially to choose which way you request to be routed. And then how much you can really influence the routing will depend on which technology is underlying. So maybe we will talk about more the control. So maybe you will not have a way to influence it.
Yeah.
But you might still at the end be able to know what kind of domains and what kind of features they had, the one you went through. And again, for accountability purposes, might be sufficient to know that you have gone through certain domains that did do certain things.
Yeah.
Then the question to you will be, is this for my use case, for the type of data that I have, or for the kind of, agreements I have, sufficient or not? What the CATRIN project does, certainly we develop new things, but we also rely on what exists.
Yeah.
Also in terms of controllability. So when we will get maybe to that part, what can you control? You see, we are also using hardware that exists, or we are trying to explore what other protocols, technologies are already suitable to do part of it.
Yeah.
So there is not going to be per se a CATRIN protocol, but there's going to be a CATRIN framework.
Okay, so if you can use existing internet measurement platforms and other data sets to build up, I think you call them network operator descriptions in the projects, like NODs is the acronym that I've seen. How do other networks make use of that information to make decisions? How do they tune what they're doing to the information that's made available from those descriptions?
Well, in some sense, that is already happening, right? Because in some sense, a network can decide whom they peer and what kind of policies they have. So operator to operators, they already have their own understanding of who do I send certain traffic to, what kind of input-output policies I have in my routes advertised, to whom I advertise. So in some sense, you already see it happening at the... What CATRIN try really to focus is maybe slightly at the earlier on, is that once you have this information and you're ready to enter the network, and this is where the two planes in the CATRIN project described come together, can I express somehow, and maybe this is a little bit related to intent-based networking, can I effectively say what kind of features would I want, what kind of paths or metrics would be important for me, and then ideally be able to control, to steer traffic toward the direction where I expect to get that kind of service. So in that sense, it's different because we would like to have the user, and again, your question was very valid, who is the user, to have some ideally control at the beginning to say, okay, I have three type of entry points, and I know that if I will enter to this path will give me more of this path will give me more of that. So maybe there is a way for the user, but to influence that. Of course, it's not me at home. I have one entry path and then I'm in the hands of the ISP. But certainly in the scientific domain again, or maybe in a business domain where you have multiple, let's say, entry points into the network and maybe some visibility, there could be a way where you can decide to enter the network in a certain way. This is what we want to demonstrate, actually. We will have a demonstration in September, October, where we'll try to show the initial results of the project. And you will see we will focus indeed in this relation between what is the information that is available and how this information that is available can then be used to make a decision on the path.
Right.
And measuring the path.
Yeah, okay.
So I would say that maybe this is a little bit different than indeed what already is possible now.
Yeah. There's an emphasis in the paper on open networking as being part of this.
Well, open networking, these all white boxes. The fact, the idea that the internet is a black box, the hardware is a black box, or somehow. So open networking is something, again, I go back to what I was saying before, the original and still very valid idea, net neutrality.
Yeah.
Open networking, we want to have open protocols. The protocol should be, they're visible to everybody. You should know what the protocol does. So open networking, this open hardware, white label switches, devices, the idea that lots of this programmability control can be done if you have more, if you can put, if you want to, your hands into the fabric of the network. So open networking starts from the protocol. We have a history of open protocols. We should maintain that history. We are maintaining that history. And you see also network vendors have moved in the last years also to open up the operating systems of their hardware so that you could do programming more. And in this project in CATRIN, for example, what we at the University of Amsterdam very heavily looked into is P4 programmable devices.
Yeah.
So effectively programmable data planes.
Yeah.
So all of this is in some sense what I would say categorizes open networking, starting from the protocol to the hardware to what you really use to move your data. With the idea that, again, not for everybody, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Not everybody should have to program or think about how to program their specific data flow. But it's possible. And you do see that this programmability beyond CATRIN is becoming, at the base of quite a lot of networking developments.
Okay.
So it's not just in CATRIN.
Yeah.
It's overall. And I see CATRIN results or CATRIN efforts, for example, in the realm of telemetry, that are actually also applicable in other, let's say, domains where we don't talk explicitly about responsible internet, but we are building internet of the future.
Yeah.
Or infrastructure of the future.
That's nice. Network operators need to be involved in this. They need to actually implement it in some way or
expose some information, and in the future there will be metrics. They would have to be willing to publish certain metrics if they are not already available. And so you say the buy-in.
Yeah. How do you incentivize people to get involved in this?
So we have colleagues in Twente that are coming more from the business school and from the let's say the intersection from IT and business. And really in the project trying to investigate what kind of economic incentive ISP or network operators could provide to their clients or could be giving each other to adopt some of the techniques. So it is an open question because as you're right, people are already operating hopefully all of the profit. They're already having their running networks. So what would be indeed the business incentive? And then I go back to where we started, where I think that you see more and more push for transparency.
Yeah.
So this is also, for example, what the VAG does in the project. You see that there is more and more. So probably the economic incentive for those that already are not open enough or they are not opening what is will come, I think, from a desire to keep customers on board or having more people using your networks.
Okay.
And again, I really liked your question because it's complex. Also, maybe compliance reason because of digital sovereignty regulations. So this is one of the things that the project looks at. So I still like the technical part.
Yeah.
I still like this control part, but I do see that people will not start to do certain things if it's not useful for them or if it's not required by from them.
Yeah.
So you're right. You touched on a very valid point. This is why actually also when we got the funding, one of the requirements was that it should not just be a technical project. We needed to have community, to show that there was also effort made to make it, to have business cases for this responsible internet.
Yeah.
And also community engagement, citizens group, societal groups. And again, I'm pretty sure here at RIPE you see it too, that you see that there is this you get wanting it or not wanting it, more intervenence from outside in terms of what you can do, what you cannot do.
Yeah.
And you have to be prepared as a community to be able to interface and also to talk the language, I think.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's right. I think there are. It's really interesting at the moment some of the things that are happening with manners, in particular, and how that's picked up a great deal of support. Obviously, they have a strong security case to make. This is just going to make the internet more secure, people, and that's really getting more and more important. But
you remember, you mentioned the fact there was this very big meeting we had here. And you heard there's lots of development, again, with the idea that ISP will benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about this area of monitoring, which is a little bit less my area. The argument was made during that workshop that ISP will want to do this because it will actually attract more clients, right? There was the argument being made by some of the people that were present, so that there will be, for some of the ISP, an incentive to be more open or more transparent, and that they were developing also protocols into that effort. So CATRIN, I think, is one project that we do here in the Netherlands, which is nice. We have lots of great networking knowledge, but you see it's a more general effort. Mm-hmm. From the US, from other countries all over.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that came through there, and this has become a really common thread recently in a lot of the podcast conversations that we've had, is there's also this push from governments now to make things more transparent beyond the technical community, to make it more visible to users and business interests.
It's funny that you say so. I'm not being original because I think it's what we all feel. I go back to this word of trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not enough, and probably should not be enough to trust that the data will arrive. Mm-hmm. Because we can trust the data will arrive. Most of our internet traffic arrives to us or to whoever we send it to. So that level of trust, we believe our ISP will send our traffic through and it will just move. But you see more and more this need to make people trust that we are actually not doing anything with their data. Yeah. This is not what they wanted. And I work in a computer science department. I see what other colleagues do, particularly AI nowadays. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of fantastic stuff happening, but there's also fears. You see it in the discourse. People start to fear more.
Yeah, for sure.
The loss of control.
Yeah.
The loss of, also I'm going to use a big word, truth. Mm-hmm. What is truth? What is true? So, as you say, I'm not surprised that the people that come here all bring is the fact that we cannot just say there's a great protocol that will give me, a few milliseconds or whatever, or less packet drop. Mm-hmm. Government will not be particularly...
Yeah.
The dialogue is not just between us, it's also probably to others. Mm-hmm. And the worry is that if we are not explaining enough... this podcast is one way to explain to people your data is value. Mm-hmm. Some people know, some people don't necessarily see, but your data is value. Like you would not give the keys of your car maybe to everybody. Maybe also you want to have a little bit more insight of who actually uses, has access, can see who you talk to.
Yeah.
And again, it gets tricky because it's easy to become very close to policing, very close to censoring, very close to...
Yeah, once people can choose, they might, it might be a negative choice a lot of the time, right? I don't want this, I don't want this, and...
Correct.
Yeah. But I also don't want to end on a negative note. And one thing that I think, was at a right meeting just a week ago and mentioned to some people that you were going to come do the podcast. So you were chatting and also, trying to encourage other people to come talk to us. But whenever I mentioned this project to people, there's a lot of positive response. People are quite excited about it, right? In the community.
But because as I say, our discussion went covering a lot of ground, but the idea is still where we technical people come with the idea that there is an answer often to most problems. Technical, we are optimists, right? Otherwise we would not do it. So we think that there is an improvement. So this project exposes the fact that our community, through many protocols, through many measurements, has the instruments to put together something which is better for certain use cases. Mm-hmm. So I have a positive note. But I'm also aware that there is also the necessity to keep what you said, what does open networking, I hope I explain what means to me. Also that we want to stand for that.
Yeah.
And push back when we actually are put in a way where we don't like.
I don't know if there's any last bits that we just totally missed or...
Well, no, I think I will do the business pitch at the end, which is just to say that I do hope people watch this podcast. Mm-hmm. I hope people will engage. Maybe there's a comment session. I don't know where people can send comments. Yeah. But I also would really like to hear from people and say, Paola, I really don't agree. Or Paola, you forgot this. So that we keep the discourse, the conversation going, because I'm pretty sure there are quite a lot of people that will have their own opinion.
Yeah. Some
people will say, oh, nonsense, it will never work, or you should be more ambitious, you should be less ambitious. I really think that I imagine that you do this podcast because you want to generate discussion. Mm-hmm. So I want to conclude on the note that I think it would be really lovely if this podcast is not just something people watch and forget, that maybe we keep the conversation going in a follow-up RIPE meeting, in another conference where we go to.
You say you've got a demonstration.
Yeah, we are working
with September, October.
Yes, there will be going to an event with NVO where we will show our colleagues what we are doing. I will probably let you know, and maybe future, maybe even in a second iteration, maybe invite you again to talk to me, or maybe one of my colleagues in the project. Yeah. You don't have always to have the same faces. Yeah. You can invite maybe the PI of the project, because maybe I should have said also the PI is in Twente.
Yeah.
It's Professor Holtz. Just to say that I would really like to have people engaging in this conversation. Mm-hmm. Both people that have good technical ideas and says, there's this other protocol, these other things you could try out.
Yeah.
But also maybe more generally about what is this framework we're building.
Nice. I think that's a nice note to cut on. Yep. So thank you very much for coming and chatting.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm curious how to do it.
That's our episode. It was great to learn more about CATRIN from Paola, and I hope we'll be able to follow up with the team again soon to find out how their demo went, and to hear more about how a responsible internet might allow operators to make better, more secure, even more climate-friendly choices about how traffic gets routed across the internet. For now, if you enjoyed the episode, please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.